Welcome to the wonderful world of looking for answers. As humans, we've always been curious about finding answers to the things we have questions about. And interestingly, in what might seem a bit of an anachronism these days, it used to be that we asked each other. That's right, other humans, for the answers to the questions we had. And this was the way. For almost 200,000 years that humans, well as we would recognize them anyway, have been around. For 6,000 generations, your ancestors looked to each other for finding the answers to the mysteries of life. And then, about 5,000 years ago, we began to find another way to optimize the access to answers, to optimize our ability to learn, to optimize our content. We built the libraries. Now, the earliest of the libraries were archives of the information. They were the keepers of the stories, the commercial transactions, the inventories. Now, when humans wanted to know the answer to something, well, there was an archive, an organized way of keeping the information, and the keeper of that was the librarian, the revered keeper of information. The great library of Alexandria in Egypt was notable for its famous librarians. One of them, Callimachus, was one of the most renowned Greek poets and scholars. But it wasn't his storytelling, even though his style and influence was uniquely valuable in the heritage of Greek poetry, that would make Callimachus truly noteworthy. As one of the librarians of the Great Library of Alexandria, Callimachus introduced what would be the first topical catalog of the library's holdings. Each of these pinnacs, as they were called, were organized by 10 subject classes into scrolls, and each contained bibliographical and condensed information about the information, and a reference, of course, to its location in the library. What Callimachus created was nothing short of remarkable. He basically indexed the entire worldwide collection of information in the Great Library of Alexandria. Callimachus, well, he ostensibly built the first Google of the world. Welcome to episode 6 of Marketing Makers, the series for those who make marketing work. I'm Robert Rose, and I'm your host. Whether you're an independent consultant, a director at a Fortune 100, a newly appointed CMO, we are all marketing makers. And this month, we're talking about the process of making our content more contextual, findable, and, well, the perfect answer. In a word, optimized. The balance of how we put people, processes, and technology together to make sure we're not just providing answers, but actually teaching something. Welcome to Marketing Makers. Homer, complete works, HA2465, that's okay, 2465, and then Homer, Iliad, HA2466, hi! Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Marketing Makers Lab. It's here we explore in depth the background behind some of marketing's historical concepts and how they've evolved today into some of the most modern of approaches. And today, well, as you can see, I've gone back in time. I had these old cards from a card catalog from my college library. Don't know what those are? Well, I can show you what they look like. Yeah, if you can believe it, this is how we used to find the books we were looking for doing that research report. Card by card, you'd find the book, and then you'd go search for it in the library. And if you were smart, you'd find a couple of options because it was likely that there were 5 other people working on that research topic, and so that book, that one that you were looking for, probably already checked out. So what would you do? Well, nothing. There was nothing you could do. But I'm not bitter about it or anything. Libraries were not only the way that we organized our information, they were also the source of our answers. About 6 years ago, the New York Public Library posted many of the questions their librarians received from the 1940s to the 1980s. And that included things like, I went to a New Year's Eve party, but I don't know the hosts. Should I send a thank you note? Or how about this one? What was the name of Napoleon's horse? Or how about this one? How do I put up wallpaper? To my absolute favorite, which seems to come on the exact day of my birth, does the New York Public Library have a computer for the use of the public? The answer? No, sir. Just hold on a second. I'm on my way. I'm right there. It's June of 1966. I'm coming, I promise. And that brings us to today. Today, if we want to ask someone for an answer, we can simply type it into an interface and wait. Our social media friends from all around the world will answer our questions. And yeah, just like the old days, you should probably be aware of just who is answering it. And instead of the librarian, well, we now have the world's information at our fingertips with search engines. But if we're the one whose answer we want to be found, how do we optimize our answer to the top of that huge pile? But maybe even more importantly, how do we provide context for the consumer, the asker of that question? The biggest challenge today is that technology has advanced to a point that the machine can find the answer in the library and extract it directly from the context that might help the asker learn more deeply. In the past, if you went to the library to look up a topic like how do you put up wallpaper, for example, well, you'd have to at least skim the rest of the book about the difficulty of actually doing it, and you might go, this is not something I really want to tackle. Today, you can get the step-by-step answer with a simple search, and you may not discover until it's too late. I'm not speaking from personal experience here or anything, with no opportunity to deepen your knowledge just how difficult that particular thing might be. Anyway, you search for a date, and you hope that this amazing new lakeside resort hotel in the mountains is still open. The answer dutifully comes back in your search engine, yes, that date is open. But you fail to get the context that the reason that it's open is because it's the last week before it closes down for 6 months to be fumigated for pests. The answer is, how do you do that? We optimize our content. And this isn't new. We've been wanting to optimize our content going all the way back to Callimachus and his challenge of creating the ultimate reference for the Library of Alexandria. Or honestly, optimizing content goes back even prehistoric days when Og and Grok were both teaching the lessons of the hunt in their cave paintings. But everybody went to Og's cave. Why? They both told the same story. Well, it's because Og's painting, they were just so much more detailed and engaging. It was more fun to go to Og's wall as opposed to Grok's. So let's give Og a like and start looking for new answers. Access to information today, it's not just search, because today's search engines, well, they're not really search engines. They're probably described better as optimized answer engines, and they are becoming increasingly challenging as the answer is not necessarily the right one, but the one that's been optimized to come to the top of the pile of the answers you're seeing. So yes, when we're looking to answers, we still go to Google. And in fact, Google commands 62% of the share of web searches today. But we're increasingly starting to look for answers elsewhere. Research shows, for example, we're looking at specific products. And if we're looking for specific products, we're much more likely to start with an Amazon search these days than a Google search. If we're looking for images, where do we go? Google Images. If we're looking for video, well, we're going to go to YouTube. Or while Google still commands the largest share of our search for directions somewhere, Apple started recently eating into that market share for searching for directions, a map to a place. Or if we're looking for what people have actually said about the products or services we're searching for, we see Facebook has actually surpassed more than 2 billion searches per day, putting it ahead of Microsoft Bing. Or if we're searching for a travel destination, it's an estimated 1 in 10 internet users start that journey with what? TripAdvisor. And there are more and more than 40 million searches on LinkedIn for job searches every single week. All of this, all of these searches on these all search engines begs the question of how are we as marketers thinking about optimizing our content for all of these questions? Now, if we go back to the early days of digital, we can see that optimizing our content to be found on search engines goes even further back than when Larry and Sergey decided to misspell the name for the largest number in the world, and they figured that it would make a good name for a company. And in fact, according to Jason Gambert, the author of the book Net Results, well, we can thank the manager of the band Jefferson Starship for starting out this wonderful idea of SEO in 1995. Yeah, the managers of the makers of classics like Jane and We Built This City on Rock and Roll was decidedly annoyed that a search for the band on search engines was returning the band's webpage on page 4. Can you imagine that? Well, how did they solve this? Well, funnily enough, in the old days, optimizing your website content, it was as simple as having the search keywords be mentioned a lot more frequently. So the company that designed the band's website hadn't thought to mention the band's name that often since, you were on their website, you probably knew who you were looking at. So once they added the band's name a lot more times in tiny black print against a black background, the site vaulted to number 1. Now, of course, this little optimization trick not only doesn't work anymore, it might be considered a black hat kind of trick that the search engines will actually penalize you for. But this was the birth of trying to optimize our content to be discoverable, to be found. And we've spent a good part of the last 25 years since trying to figure out just how to do this with our websites and our content. And it's certainly a lot more complicated these days. As we just talked about, it's no longer just about optimizing against search engines. We have to optimize against social channels, vertical channels, industry channels, and yes, even our own owned media channels. Yeah, that's right. Because even if we can get somebody to our answers, well, we have to be able to engage them beyond just answering the question. We have to also have the ability to put the right context around that answer. So how do we do that? Well, the short answer, of course, is to create awesome content. I mean, isn't that the answer to everything? But we should also remember our overall goal here is not to attract the most people all of the time to answer all questions and our information. Rather, our goal is to attract the right people at their optimal time to answer the intended question with the best contextual answers. Right, optimal, intention, best, context. Those are the keywords we want to think about. Let me ask you a question. How do you craft engaging and SEO-friendly content from scratch? Our sponsor, Semrush, has identified 12 key steps you can take to optimize your copy for users and search engines. They've created a guide to map out the entire process, from keyword search to copy optimization to a content audit. If you're looking to create better content marketing experiences for your users and outrank your rivals, you're going to want to get this free guide. Optimize your content for SEO and improve its quality on the go with SEO Writing Assistant by Semrush. Try it for free today at semrush.com/SWA. That URL again is semrush.com/SWA.